Hey everybody, welcome back to Race of History. I'm going to do both versions of the Sabaton history for both versions of the Royal Guard, the Swedish and English. We're going to start with the Swedish one. This was recommended to me or I was asked to do both versions of it, so that's what I'm going to do. We're going to do the Swedish version first, or the Sabaton history for the Swedish version first. I'm going to try to get the other one out today. I've got to be honest. I've been super busy, and I've been really focused into, I've talked about this on the channel before, but economics is super interesting to me. It's something I look at and study a lot, and I've been super interested in kind of the current place or position of the U.S. economic, stock market and just the economy as a whole. So that's been taking away some of my time, but I'm going to try to get both versions out today. If I don't, the English version will be out tomorrow. That's the latest that it'll be out. And then I'm going to start getting into a couple of series over this time period. So one of them is I think Deluge series by Eastery, and then Kings and Generals and maybe Extra Credits have Great Northern War series. So I'm going to get into those. Also, just so everybody knows, especially with things like Swedish history, a lot of the subscribers and people that watch the videos and stuff are Swedish, right? And even those that aren't tend to gravitate towards this because they know a lot about Swedish history or this era of history and stuff like that. There are parts of history that I am pretty decently knowledgeable about, but all things considered, I'm a dummy. Like I'm not super intelligent. And so this is more a way for me to kind of learn and go through different areas and eras and time in history and kind of work through things, talk out ideas, get context and feedback from people that are watching the videos. That's why I do this. This isn't, I'm not teaching a history class, right? Like, that's not the lane that I would like to be in. The lane that I would like to be in is people that are interested in history or interested in a time period. All of this stuff is super interesting to me, right? And so I feel like I get different perspectives of even the things that I know well. I get different perspectives of certain eras or ideas or time periods, whatever, by doing this. It's a way for me to kind of, gain a little bit of perspective on history as a whole. And so I really like doing it. It's fun for me. But if you want somebody to teach you history, this may not be the move for you, because even with the things that I know, like I said, I'm a dummy, right? So just maybe like a PSA for everybody. But all right, let's get into it. Sabaton history. Let's go.
I'm Indy Nidell.
I'm Per from Sabaton.
And welcome back to Sabaton History.
This is about Livgardet.
There was a tradition in the Swedish military that the chaplain would end prayer with the words Gud bevara konungen and fäderneslandet. God protect king and fatherland. And the soldiers would answer, Gud hörde, may God listen. Such a devotion to the Swedish monarchy was nowhere stronger than in the Swedish Livgardet. The Livgardet, also known as Högvakten, the Royal Guards, or Slottsvakten, the Palace Guards, is one of Europe's oldest extant military formations still operating. Their history goes back to the origins of modern Sweden itself, back when Gustav Eriksson fought a bloody war of liberation for the dissolution of the Kalmar Union. In 1523, when Eriksson was crowned as Swedish King Gustav Vasa, he chose his 16 most loyal men for service in his royal bodyguard.
That is so long ago. Like, I know that it kind of depends on the context and lineage and all that you view history through. But what in the modern day is still around from the 1500s? Like, what is the same in our world today that was the same in, 1523? Like, I mean, I feel like almost nothing is. I feel like it's almost a totally different world than what it was then. And what's interesting about that is they probably felt the same way, right? They probably felt like advancements and human evolution had gotten to a point where things were different then than they had been before that. What's weird about that is that when you view it from hindsight, you kind of view it all as the same. Like, I mean, obviously you see the ups and downs, but on a long enough time horizon, you kind of start to see, particularly these time periods, all the same. And so, as far as what they're fighting with and the way that they conduct warfare and things of that sort. So that's very interesting to me that they are still around today and that the institution itself is so damn old. Because I just can't think of many things off the top of my head that are that way.
In times of turmoil and war, when loyalties had a price and trust was hard to find, those 16 men were sworn to defend the Swedish king with their lives. From this time onwards, the Swedish Royal Guard would remain at the king's side to keep their monarch safe. Over the centuries, the Guard would take on different names, weapons, and uniforms, but their duty remained unchanging. It began with the Royal Drabant Corps, Kungliga Drabantkåren, which has made up the core of the household guard since 1523. The term Drabant is related to the German Landsknechte and describes men who traditionally fought with halberds and estocks. And for a long time, the term Drabant was synonymous with soldiers closely guarding their king. Well, until it became cooler to use the French name Garde du Corps. In Sweden, much of the military tradition came from citizen cavalry, like the Stockholm Military Corps, which was formed in wartime for the defense of the capital. The Royal Drabant Corps took on many forms and temporary regiments, like Drabanterna Konungens Hofregemente, the King's Courts Regiment, the yellow-uniformed Gule Brigaden, Kungliga Majestäts Livgardet, and Konungens Livgardet, until the turn of the 18th century, when they became the Svea and Göta Livgardet, the predecessor.
Okay, wait. Did he say that the cavalry formed was a citizens cavalry? Is that what he said? If it is, that's an interesting move, right? Like, we always talk about how obviously during the French Revolution, monarchs did not typically use their civilians to fight because they didn't want their civilians trained in warfare. Like, that was the last thing they wanted, was for, the people that they were scared to death of to know how to fight. Somebody tell me, is that legit? Is that the way that worked? And if it is, how crazy is that?
ancestors of today's Livgardet. They were disbanded for a time in 1821 until King Oscar I reinstated the Drabans as a ceremonial guard unit for his coronation in 1844. To this day, they wear historic uniforms, like the breastplates and the knee-high boots. They even wear the original jackets made out of moose hide from Carolean times. Each guard was outfitted with the best weapons, uniforms, and horses available to keep the Swedish royal family safe. They were elite, loyal, and obedient to the core. And their lives were expendable if it meant catching a bullet for the king. Their primary task in peacetime was to guard Stockholm Castle from spies and assassins.
Okay, so I asked this in the comments yesterday, but well, I sort of asked this, but in a different way. But when the monarchy began to lose power, how does anybody know how that transition worked? Because if you have a group of military personnel that are, devoutly loyal to the crown, how does it work when the crown starts to lose power? What does that shift look like for that military unit? You would think it would be kind of a weird transition, right? Where your loyalty, I guess it's still to the crown, sort of, but like there's a parliament and they're actually the ones that hold power. So now is your loyalty to just Sweden? And like, how did that happen over time? I don't know. That seems like it would be an odd transition for the people who were actually living through it and were in the group at the time.
And pesky citizens with radical ideas. On their journeys through the country, the mounted royal guard accompanied the royal family and looked out for their safety. In 1619, a royal corps of halberdiers was formed, whose main task was to guard the palace in Stockholm. During the 30 Years' War, this also accompanied Gustavus Adolphus into battle.
That's such a great picture. That's like the third time I've seen it in the songs or series or whatever. It's such a great picture.
And in 1633, came back to Stockholm with his lifeless body. The halberdiers stayed at the palace and became the core of the guard regiment for Queen Christina and her royal household. Around the same time, Swedish General Lars Kage, a lifelong companion of Gustav Adolf, introduced grenadiers into the royal guards. Men chosen for the grenadiers were already large and imposing soldiers, whose task it was to hurl heavy grenades into the enemy ranks. To further signify their status as an elite unit, they wore large mitres or bearskin caps. From 1868, the Swedish Royal Grenadiers have carried the King's own life company banner.
Vart vägen än bär, att beskydda gardets svär. För konung och rike det viger sitt liv.
Later in the 17th century, the dragoons were introduced into the royal guard. Although the dragoons were mounted troops, they were generally classified as infantry on horseback, mounted infantry. Armed with short-barreled carbine rifles, they were fast and flexible and were often given security duties. In 1906, the Swedish Dragoons became officially known as the Mounted Royal Guard. While Sweden, for most of its history, recruited its army through a general allotment system, the soldiers of the Livgardet were recruited directly into service. Training for the guards was very tough, with naturally a high focus on discipline, as the soldiers would represent the Swedish monarchy to the public. And it was a very desirable place to be. Not only did it pay well, but serving in the Royal Guard opened further doors for a soldier's career through the connections they made. The prestige and status that came with a place in the Guard was comparable to similar royal household units in the rest of Europe at the time. Although the majority of the recruits came from the Swedish mainland, the Royal Guard was also open to recruits from the Finnish and German provinces, as well as suitable candidates from foreign countries.
Wow.
Officers who had honorably ended their service would usually go on to command regular provincial regiments. During wartime, the Royal Guard was sent to the battlefield. From the Swedish War of Liberation in the 1520s to the rise of the Swedish Empire in the 30 Years' War, up until its inglorious end in the Russo-Swedish War at the end of the 18th century. Whenever the Swedish king went into combat, the Royal Guard was with him. Under King Charles XII, Karl XII, the Royal Guard reached their numerically largest strength. Up to 2,600 men served as his personal vanguard in the battles of the Great Northern War. Traditionally, the Royal Guard served on the far right of the battle line. This was historically the most honorary and also the most dangerous position on the field, and it was common for the regiment to take heavy casualties. And more than once, it was completely wiped out, like at the defeat at Poltava. But time and time again, it was rebuilt and reestablished. With the end of the Swedish Empire, the Royal Guard returned to primarily guard duty once more. The palace in the second half of the 18th century was a home of treachery and harbored a good amount of corrupt officials, conspirators, and would-be assassins. Like the old Praetorian Guard of Rome, the Swedish Royal Guard became often directly involved in such intrigues. During the coup d'etat in 1772, the Royal Guard sided with Gustav III and overthrew the government in favor of the monarchy. But when Gustav IV began degrading the Royal Guard and even threatened to reduce them to a regular line regiment, well, unsurprisingly, the Royal Guard was not that eager to defend him when another coup led to his downfall. Turns out, insulting one's bodyguard when you're already unpopular was a bad idea.
That's very interesting. They were involved in the politics over time. Oh my goodness, that is so interesting. Because, you know, I don't know, maybe it's a modern lens that I'm viewing it through. But especially in the modern day, like, you would expect a group like this to at least attempt to stay, like, apolitical. You know, that would kind of be, honestly, it would probably be in their, like, bylaws of how they were put together, that they would stay apolitical. But in a time of such political chaos and transition and upheaval, is that even possible? I don't know if it is, but it's certainly crazy to me that they were openly, like, it wasn't a thing where they were doing it behind the scenes, although my guess is if they were doing it openly, there was a lot going on behind the scenes. But just the idea that it would be so out in the open, participation and then very clearly non-participation in a coup. I don't know. That's super interesting to me.
Well, with the end of the Finnish War in 1809, Sweden's time as a great military power was up. Still, the Royal Guard remained, guarding the royal family in Stockholm. Before the advent of a professional police force, they were also in charge of overseeing criminal prosecution and in command of firefighting. The mounted guard remained as the escort of the royal family on their trips, until the spread of automobiles reduced the need for escorts on horseback. For most of its history, the Royal Guard was stationed in the capital itself, but housed individually by the citizens of Stockholm. It was not until 1803 that they moved into barracks, and not until 1888 when the Svea and Göta lifeguards got their own housing built. In 1942, for the first time since their entry into Stockholm, they were moved further north, away from the city. In 2000, the Svea lifeguard was officially disbanded, and most of its staff was incorporated into the modern Livgardet. Nowadays, the professional Royal Guard is divided into two detachments. one serving at Stockholm Palace and the other at Drottningholm Palace just outside of town. The regiment consists of light infantry, security, and guard battalions. They stand guard during Sweden's state ceremonies, accompany the Minister of Defense on official visits, or honor the visits of foreign military commanders to Sweden. They are also a huge tourist attraction. It's true. Between April and August, the changing of the guard attracts hundreds of thousands of tourists. The mounted squadrons ride out in traditional light blue full-dress uniforms and silver pickelhaube helmets, while the guards on foot wear their dark blue uniforms with black pickelhaube helmets. On their way from the barracks to the center of Stockholm, they are accompanied by the Lifeguards Dragoon Music Corps. Today, the ceremonial duties of the Royal Guard are open to all parts of Sweden's armed forces, even the Home Guard and the voluntary units. For example, in 2009, it was Lottorna's turn, the Swedish Women's Voluntary Defense Organization. Usually, each unit takes over the protective and ceremonial duties of the Royal Guard for 5 to 7 days a year. Sweden has enjoyed peace for many, many decades, but the Royal Guards, the Livgardet, remains. Although they are now modernized and mechanized, at the core, they have not changed. From Gustav Vasa in 1523 to today's Swedish king Carl XVI Gustav, the Livgardet is there to safeguard Stockholm and the monarchy.
Okay, so the changing of the guard, that is something very different in the United States, right? That is like an official thing that we have. It is maybe the polar opposite of what this is. But they do it every year. Every year they go out and do the changing of the guard. And it's so bizarre to see them in the helmets. It's more bizarre to see them in the helmets than it is to see them in the whole old school uniforms. It's the helmet specifically that for some reason in my brain looks super bizarre in the modern day. But what a cool, I don't know, like I said, the US doesn't go back this far. Obviously 500 years ago there was no United States. So this kind of stuff is super interesting to me because there is no comparison for it here. So it's like a totally different, totally kind of new thing.
För Sverige i tiden dit konungen går. Det gör vad som synes omöjligt på den framtidens spår.
Okay, Per, I have 2 questions, but I'm going to say them all as one question, okay?
All right.
Why this? Why now?
So, we're coming up to the 500 years anniversary of Sweden.
Right. The modern Sweden, yeah.
And that kind of requires some celebration.
Right. Hey! There you go.
Yeah.
I am a Swedish citizen now, so it's my country too.
You're invited to the celebration.
Yeah.
We are no longer invited to the celebration, but we were invited to be part of creating the celebration for this.
You were specifically, they said, let's get Sabaton.
Yeah, they asked us if we would be able to write a song for one of the oldest military regiments in the entire world, which is the Swedish Livgardet.
Okay.
And
the regiment asked you, or someone else asked you to write it?
They are part of the Swedish Army.
Okay.
So the request came from the Swedish Army. And we normally don't do songs by request, except when we did Bismarck, and we have done something like that in the past as well. But we usually don't do songs on request. We come with an idea and we do it no matter what.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like you.
But in this case, it was so many interesting things. I mean, we wanted to cover it. We wanted to sing about this. It felt like a natural, okay, this is a good subject for a Sabaton song.
Yeah, it's a really good fit.
And the 500 years anniversary makes for an absolutely legal or good cause to do the song at the moment. So everything was there. So we said yes to the Swedish Army, that let's go on and we will write this song. And But after a while, they returned to us and said we have to back out. So we were, of course, disappointed that after we started to prepare for these plans and prepare for writing this song, and then they back out. But we didn't back out.
No.
Now we are doing it. Originally, we planned to do the song with the support of the Swedish Army. Now we do the song anyway.
Okay.
And it's, as I said, it was a good subject even without anybody asking us to do it. So that's why.
What happened? What was the issue here? And I feel like they did a really good job with it. It sounds celebratory and, like I said in the thing, almost like religious in a sense. And I don't know. I feel like they did a really good job of capturing that sound. But what was the issue? Why the snag?
Well, we did.
But this song, it's not part of another whole Swedish album or anything.
It's not part of a new album. I mean, you could fit it in. The Swedish Livgardet is, it's 500 years of history.
Yeah, sure.
And we didn't want it to focus on a specific event. We wanted to focus on this military regiment. But even though that cost, you could fit it in to the Carolus Rex album.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, sure.
And so we mentioned a couple of the battles during the Swedish Empire where, for sure, Livgardet was.
Okay, I haven't got to read the lyrics yet, so this is news to me, actually. So,
yeah, and at the moment we haven't heard how it is, because right now, as we are sitting here, Joachim is in the studio singing this song right now.
Right now.
He even asked a few minutes ago when he can come here not to disturb us, because obviously I guess he's ready with the song, which sounds awesome.
So we might actually get to hear something rough today, even.
Maybe we're lucky.
Do you know what occurs to me? You say the Swedish Army asked you to do this and then they backed out. Now, in the Wolfpack Part 2 episode, you explained to everyone in the world about your lack of compulsory military service by trying to be crazy because you couldn't be a fighter pilot or a submarine ace. But that couldn't have anything to do with it. Could it? Could it? Could it? But that's very interesting. But when the song is finished, do you expect it to be taken up or by the military, or is this just like what happens happens?
Whatever happens now. I mean, the song, everybody's able to enjoy the Sabaton songs, and I mean, obviously we write the songs for our fans.
Yeah.
So everybody, I hope and I believe that our fans gonna like it because it's a kick-ass song.
When it's the 500th anniversary, do you know of any specific celebrations or things they're gonna do? Have they asked other bands or things or artists to do stuff? As far as you know, I don't know anything about this.
Well, I was part of plans.
Yeah.
I was sitting together with the Swedish Army, planning activities around this, which obviously we are not part of, but I will not reveal them. But I was aware of some of their plans, yes.
Okay.
And I hope they go through with all the plans. I hope they do everything that they have said. I'm just sad we will not be a part of it. It would have been cool, but we'd be fine anyway. We're Sabaton, we're touring the world.
And
we are busy anyway.
Yeah, but as you said, other than being busy, if they'd never asked you, then they never would have gotten this kick-ass song. Well, that is it for today, but we'll see you next time, whenever that may be,
here on the Sabaton History Channel.
Okay, so that was the Sabaton history for the Swedish version of the Royal Guard. Yeah, it was great. I'm very interested in what happened between them and the Swedish. I don't know if it was the army specifically or just kind of like the political world or what that was. So somebody let me know. But yeah, that was a good one. I'll do the English part later this afternoon or tomorrow. As always, like, comment, subscribe. Help me keep building the channel over here. I will see you all next time.